Um, Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, you hear me now? Oh my goodness, I must have I must have pressed the on button long before I was like, oh, yes, 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 there you are. Well, okay. Well, I guess we're just going to start a couple minutes earlier today. Um, Here I am sitting at my desk, just kind of figuring out what I'm going to be doing. Okay, I have about 2 minutes till the hour. Now, I tell you what I did here today, I must have turned the live thing on before we actually got live. At least, you remember 4 or 5 weeks ago, I turned the off button on before I was supposed to. I mean, like within the first 60 seconds. So that's what happens when you have this 60-year-old mind that just kind of wondering where am I going with all of this. So, well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that we're early, and I'm glad that we get to do what we do. And so I have to call Michaela and tell her kind of slice that part that was anyway. Hi, Team Healthy. I'm glad. For those of you who are new, and normally most of the time I get it right and turn it on at the appropriate time. And so here we are. I'm glad to be here with you. Well, we've got a very interesting program here that we're going to be going into today, and I've got a lot of good questions from you. And you know that I like to come up with a theme where we talk about some of the things that you all are dealing with, and I try to kind of put them under a consistency here. And today we're going to be talking heavily about holding on to your sense of resolve with a narcissist because they're counting on you not to have that. One of the things that happens is when you're dealing with that narcissistic individual, they will whittle away at your sense of well-being to the extent that they want to take the normal you out of the equation and fill you with who they are. And that's it's in a certain way. I say narcissists are like thieves, and they want to rob you of yourself so they can put that away and then just make you a mini version of who they are. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today, okay? And it's just part of their shtick, and the more you're aware of it, then the more you can have that sense that says, I am not going to let that happen. You want to hold on to your resolve. So, what we're going to do here is with the first question. By the way, those of you who are brand new and where I actually start on time at the right time, go ahead and just put your questions in the comments section below, and I'll pick up on them. I do the copy and paste here, and then next week we're going to pick up and we're going to answer more questions. It gives me a chance to know where you're coming from. The first question I have here today. This says, Dr. C, you've mentioned that over time, we can have a weakening of our resolve. That's what prompted me to use that as our title here for this week. We can have a weakening of our resolve into unhealthy responses of our own. And this is a very interesting thing that this person brings up. They say, I found after the narcissist in my life died, something beyond conscious awareness took over inside of me. I lost focus, concentration declined, and I sort of disoriented. Okay. And then she goes on to say, it didn't feel as if a conscious choice was involved. What is this? And how might this play into narcissism? Okay, this is a fascinating question. Remember, one of the things I mentioned to you is that they're counting on you to buy into their pathology. Um, I want you to think when you have had repeated exposure to something that was purported to be truth, okay? And then over time, you've heard all sorts of things of that nature repetitively. Then eventually, it becomes your norm. For example, if someone just continually says you don't make any sense, and then you try to talk about things, well, where'd you come up with something like that? And then they go back and they say, yeah, you don't even know what you're talking about. Over time, of course, that's gaslighting. And one of the goals of gaslighting is they want to make you feel very confused about what you believe to be accurate. They'll whittle away at your sense of resolve. Now, as that occurs, then you can finally just get habituated, thinking, well, the next time I say something, it's probably going to be wrong. And so, in a case like this person is saying, even after the individual died, there was like something subconscious on the inside of me was just anticipating that I'm wrong, that I don't make sense, that what I say or what I feel or how I interpret life is not going to be very accurate. And so that becomes part of the norm. Now, I want to give you a really interesting illustration. There was this man that I met, this is several years ago, and probably one of the most delightful people that you would ever know. And he was congenial, he was pleasant, good conversationalist, and liked to tell funny stories. He told of a time in his own life, and he was middle aged by the time I met him, where he in his 20s he had met with a family that kind of took him in, where it'd be like Friday night, well, come on over and have dinner with the family, and then they wound up doing all sorts of things, and he would go to there on holidays and things like that, and it was very different from his own family of origin. And he said, that experience of being with that family over an extended period of time changed my life for the better. And he told me, he said, every time I would encounter this new family that treated me well, it hit me that all during my childhood, I had been lied to. And he went on to explain, I was told that I was no good. I was told that I made no sense. I was told that I had to fit inside their belief system and structure. And then whenever I even dared to have a different kind of a thought, it was verbally slapped down, if you will. And that's kind of the way it worked. And he was telling me this, both with joy and tears. It's like, how can somebody do that? And one of the things that can happen when you're in a narcissistic system is you can feel brainwashed. And that's what was going on with this particular man. And so this man was having a reorientation of what he believed to be right and true. But you see, the narcissist is counting on you not to think independently. They want you to go into their system. They want you to think as they do, and so when you come along and say, "Well, I'm going to do something different," they're going to whack away at that and say, "But you can't." And yet, at the same time, what we're going to say is, "Well, but I am different," and that's where you begin to hold on to your resolve. It's not being subversive. It's not being mean spirited when you say these people were wrong. They led me down a wrong path, and I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to acknowledge it. That's what it was. Okay. Another person um, answers, and this is a very common question that I get. They ask the question, does it make any difference if I tell her, and I don't know who the her is, a wife or a mother or a sister or a person at work, does it make any difference if I tell her she manifests symptoms and traits of a total narcissist? I know it won't change anything, but shouldn't she at least know that there's a big problem with her mental health? Considering she asks me what's wrong with her sometimes, especially when she's very sober. Okay, that's a dead giveaway. It implies that this individual is dealing with somebody who has addiction issues. Okay, should I tell someone that they're a big time narcissist? And my response is basically probably not. Okay, now hear me out all the way on that. Most people, unfortunately, because of because of people like me and some of the others that speak into this issue, we've made narcissism a pretty well known word now. And some individuals take that word narcissism and they think, oh, there's someone I don't like. They must be a narcissist. It just becomes an ugly name that they just kind of pull out, and it can be overused, quite frankly. When I use the term narcissism, immediately in my mind, I'm thinking narcissism is about someone who's highly controlling. They're very selfish. They speak over other individuals. They have to have the last word, which is their way of trying to maintain control and superiority. They live behind a false self. They make up truth as they go along. We call that their alternate reality. The word narcissism is a short-term word that includes all of those kinds of things. If you just go up to someone and say, well, I've concluded you're a narcissist, it's not going to mean that much to someone who probably needs to hear what you have to say. Instead, what I tell folks is, um, just describe what you notice, the patterns, if you feel the need to confront it all. For example, it may be that you'll say, or rather than saying, well, you're just being a narcissist, you might say something like, I don't know if you realize, but we've been having a conversation about something that's bothersome, and you've interrupted me several times. And it would be nice if you would refrain from doing that. Okay, so you're calling out their control tendencies, you're calling out their lack of empathy. Or you might say something like, I know that you're putting a lot of emphasis on telling me who I'm supposed to be. If you could just hear me out, I would really appreciate that. But perhaps you could put more emphasis on listening than telling. I would like that. Now, that would be a type of confrontation where you're not using that nasty word, narcissist. And if you're going to get through to that individual, it might be done through that means. And so it's what I call descriptive communication. And so make sure that you do that. Now, having said that, if this is an individual who's strongly narcissistic, even when you are delicate and if you're very diplomatic in the way that you explain yourself, some of them just don't want to hear from you. It's like, hey, look, I'm me. Uh, I'm wonderful. I don't make mistakes, and so if you pick up on something inside of me that you don't particularly like, then that's your problem, not mine. And that's the way a lot of them operate. Okay. Now, another question that we have. Um, and this is one where, again, I want you to hear in this question where this person has lost their sense of initiative. They've lost their sense of resolve. Okay. This person asked the question: is it common for people who have suffered from narcissistic abuse to adopt some of the narcissistic traits as a coping mechanism? I'm still doubting myself and I'm wondering if I'm a narcissist. Okay. Yes, it is possible, or it's common. Let's suppose that you've been in a primary relationship. Let's say it's inside your home or a major social structure, and you've been on the receiving end of criticism. It's very easy after a while for you to think, you know what, two can play this game, and so they gripe at you, and you might say something like, "Well, what about you?" And so you gripe right back. Or let's suppose that somebody is goes into a shutdown mode and you don't like it. And so the next time they want to talk, it's like, you know what, I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine. And you go into shutdown mode. And it's extremely common that those kinds of patterns can emerge where you actually pick up too many cues from the narcissist and they wind up establishing your pace. And so this person is asking, is it common if I've been abused narcissistically for me to pick up on their behaviors? And the answer is, yeah, we often fight fire with fire. And you'll notice through many of my videos and comments that I make on my live feed, it's like, I don't want that disrupted person to be the one who's establishing my pace. It makes no sense to think, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to imitate what that person offers. That's easier said than done because if you've been exposed over and over to the narcissistic characteristics, go back to your grammar school days. What's the best way for you to learn something? And you learn through modeling. Okay. And so when control or criticism or anger or defensive has been modeled over and over, it is easy for you to decide, well, I'm just going to do the same thing. You just get sucked right in. It's just becomes habitual. So I think as you become more and more informed about what narcissism actually is, rather than saying, well, I don't like that, which I appreciate that you would think that, I'm hoping you can take it further and ask, well, what are my better alternatives? That's the whole point for us to examine this pattern of behavior, right? What are my better alternatives? How do I want to manage myself in such a way where I don't imitate this person who's been so subversive to me? And that's when you know your resolve has taken over. And then when the narcissist comes along and says, well, I think you're just being difficult, or I think you're being awful, consider the source. Well, of course they think that because you're not going along with their control agenda. But then in your moments of quiet reflection, begin asking, am I an unreasonable person? Am I asking for something that's just not appropriate? And when you think, well, what I'm asking for is kindness. What I'm asking for is good listening, affirmation, cooperation. And I'm being shamed for being that my unique person in that direction. I don't think so. I'm not going to go in that kind of direction, and I'm not going to let someone of that nature take me down a path of self denial and self doubt. And that's what we mean when we say hold on to your own sense of resolve. Trust your gut. And know that the narcissist has a vested interest in keeping you down because that's how they build themselves up by diminishing you. Know their game so that you can just have that much more of a sense of well-being about who you are. Okay, this next one, and I want to get some true confessions from some of you on this one. This person says, "My question is it evil to hate the narcissist?" Okay, how many of you can say, "Yeah, I know that I have had hate towards somebody who has been completely inappropriate towards me. I've been abused. I've been misinterpreted. I've been misrepresented. I've been cheated on. And I sometimes just find myself just having a lot of contempt and hate." So this person says, "Is it evil to hate a narcissist?" And then they go on to say, especially when the narcissist is the very one in a family relationship who should have protected me from the hurt. And I can only imagine what might have caused the person to ask that kind of question. There would be times when I would hear stories of sexual abuse, and let's remember, about 20 to 25% of young girls, and it's a little lower for boys, but they get it too. 20 to 25% of young girls have been sexually abused by somebody. And they come into their adult years and they're trying to figure out, what am I going to make of that? Or how many other people have been verbally and emotionally abused, or they've been in a relationship as an adult, and that person turned out to be not just a liar, but the consummate deceiver. Or they went to a place of business, and I just talked to a lady recently, had great records on her employee evaluations, and got laid off. No explanation. And it's like, what are you people doing? And how many of you have been exposed to folks? And the only way you can explain it is there's a gross lack of fairness here. There's a gross indignity that I've been exposed to. Is it wrong for you to say, I hate that? I don't think it is. Now, having said that, how long do you want to hold on to it? And that's one really large emotion. Is that what you want to have as the centerpiece? And you know that there are some individuals who have had very difficult circumstances, and 10 years after the fact, 15 years after the fact, they're still holding on to it. That's when it becomes problematic. Okay. And to the point where if you wind up giving away what you were given with all of the inappropriateness, and you become destructive toward other individuals, that's when the evil element has in fact crept into your personality. And then the question is, are you so far gone that you can't do anything about it? That's a scary question. So is it evil to feel that way? No. Do you take yourself down the continuum to where it can become a centerpiece? It can happen, and I've seen it happen. And so the challenge is for you to ask, okay, if I know that I genuinely hated being treated with disdain, I want to make sure that even though I have that feeling towards that individual, that I want to make sure that I don't turn around and do it towards other individuals. And eventually, I even want to get to the point where I can think about that person who was uh, completely negative toward me without going into my space of complete and total despair. The way I put it is on a continuum of -10 to +10. Okay. Usually you hear about from 0 to 10, but on a continuum of -10 to +10. Let's suppose that someone was a true -10 or a -9 in your life. Now, you may not get all the way up to +10. You may not even get to +2. But if you can at least bring yourself up to 0, okay, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to go into any wonderful feelings towards that person, but neither am I going to hold on to the contempt where my day is completely ruined. Then that's a success. Okay, so try to give yourself realistic goals like that. That's a very good question for you to ask, because I think it's your way of saying, I want to make sure that I'm not so susceptible that I wind up falling prey to their totally inappropriate way of being. My heart goes out to you for asking that question, because like I say, I can only imagine what brought you to the place of asking such a question as that. Okay. All right. This next one, and I'm going to be a little bit directive on this one too. This person says, "Why can't I break away from my narcissistic boyfriend? It's been almost 3 years, and I'm still going through the same abuse. What's wrong with me? Am I crazy?" Okay, do any of you have the same reaction as I do? Why can't I break away from that abusive boyfriend after 3 years? And the word that I'm focused on is can't. Okay. Again, my heart goes out to this person, because one of the things that narcissists can do, and it sounds as though this is a pretty abusive kind of thing, is it's called the trauma bond. But you wind up being so bound by that person, because they can tell you something like, nobody would want you, or you're just nothing but damaged goods, or they scream and yell, and you've had so many perhaps poor reactions in reverse, that you begin thinking, well, why would I even go to someone else? Because I'm so damaged now, and I'm so hurt that I can't do it with anybody else. And so you can have a total feeling of defeat. So I get that. But that word can't, that just keeps echoing. Why can't I get away from an abusive boyfriend? Now, a couple of things. Number one, if you don't have the money, in other words, I can't afford an apartment on my own, or I can't afford, I don't have a job. Well, then you need to find some independence in that regard, some way of being able to physically take care of yourself. But now let's suppose that's not really the fullest issue, and this is going to be kind of hard for you to hear this. Sometimes people won't leave a bad relationship because the pain is not strong enough. Now, I'll say that to some individuals. It's like, well, I've had a whole lot of pain. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know you've just told me, but apparently not enough, because you keep going back and allowing you put your face out there and say, I'll let you slap on it some more. And one of the things that I find is pain is a strong motivator. For example, I mean, just the old thing, if you touch your hand on a stove and you get burned, how many more times are you going to go back and touch your hand on the stove? I'm not doing it because I remember it hurt too much. Pain is a motivator. Are you listening to what your pain is telling you? And I've had some individuals, it's like, yeah, I have one person who had their face broken, the bones in their face broken. And that's what it took. It's like, yeah, it was so bad that happened, but there were so many preliminary actions before that. I hated it. I didn't like it. I didn't get away. I just pled my case. I kept begging for them not to do that. But finally, when the pain was enough, and it was a physical pain with a psychological pain, and then the embarrassment of having to go to the hospital and explain what really happened, because they didn't want to have to continue to lie, the pain finally got bad enough. And this was an individual who didn't have a job, but the necessity is a mother of invention. She found a way to get a job, and so and she appealed to some people that were able to help her. So why can't I get away? Well, I guess you have to wait until your resolve is strong enough. But I'm hoping that there comes a time when you can think, I deserve better. And I don't want to be in pain for the rest of my life. And somebody needs to be the chairman of the pain reduction committee. And that somebody's going to be me. That's when you know that you're at a place where, even though that narcissist is going to keep coming after you, where it's like, you know what? That person is wrong. And my needs, my desires, my goals are completely appropriate. So, why can't you? Part of it is that person is pulling you back, but then you're not listening to what your pain is telling you. And so you might want to ask, what do I do with the negativity? I'm not going to just claim it as a permanent message about who I am and how awful I am. So I'm hoping that you can listen to yourself, trust your gut, and then it's going to require you to take a big step forward and say, it's time for me to do something about it. I'm the only one that can ultimately, and I care enough about me that I'm going to go in that direction. That's a tough one. Okay, the next question. Is it my imagination or are narcissists naturally drawn toward kind and friendly people? And the answer is no, that's not your imagination. I don't think I'm very narcissistic, but I'm drawn toward kind and friendly people. I like it when someone says, "Hey, I'd like to know you." Oh, good. Or when someone, through their behaviors, illustrates a consideration and they show themselves to be conscientious, or they're a good conversationalist, and they you go to their house and they provide give you nice provisions. You know what I think? I want to go back to that. Well, the narcissist thinks that way too, but they think that way in a very different kind of with a different kind of mindset. A healthy individual is going to say, "Yeah, I'm drawn towards friendly and kind people because that way, then I can share my experiences of the similar nature, and we can make this a very mutually gratifying relationship." Narcissists are thinking, "I can make this work for me." Kind people are a little more to the narcissist than narcissistic supply. This is someone who's naturally prone towards affirmation. I need a whole lot of it, and you're going to be the one who's designated to give it to me. And at first, they can come along and they can imply that this is great and I appreciate you and thank you. And they may, bring you a flower, or they may, take you to dinner, or they may introduce you to some of their friends and you go to interesting and fun places and all. So, yeah, this is working. But narcissists, unfortunately, when they show an affinity toward your kindness, they can't help eventually but let their color show. They start controlling you. They start letting you know, "Hey, you owe me." Remember you inside their control so that they can have the ultimate influence over you. And then over time, you begin realizing they're thinking, "I own you, and you're obliged to me. You need to keep giving it to me. And by the way, quit giving all that kindness to everybody else." And their traits will start coming through. And so, is it natural for them? It's like, yeah, they need your supply. They're extremely needy. You've heard me say before that narcissists are strongly codependent, and when we say codependent, they play off of other individuals' emotions, and they're wanting you to play off of theirs. And so, what they'll do is they'll groom you and they'll bring you in, and then when they've got you, then it's like, keep it up because this is what I deserve. You don't deserve it in reverse, but this is what I deserve. Why aren't you being better? And I know that sounds rather cynical, and yet at the same time, that's the way they operate. Okay. Um, let's take another one. This person's. I just recently put up a short about do you should you bully the bully, and so apparently this person was asking in response to that. I know we're not supposed to be a bully to the narcissist who bullies, but I have such a strong desire to kick my narcissistic ex in the groin, literally. Okay. Can you picture that one? He's such an awful person. How do I resist the urge to create pain in him? Well, okay. So here you got this bully, and this bully just says something like, "You're this," and they call you a filthy name. And I don't, and I told these people you're no good. And you're thinking, there's my knee, there's his groin. I'd like to just ram my knee right into his groin, teach him a lesson. Well, why don't we start with the presumption that says that's an option? You can do that if that's what you want to do. Now, before we get to the point where you enact that, let's ask another question. Is that a wise option? And you might think, well, short term, it sure would make me feel pleasure to watch him bend over and just be writhing in pain. What would be the next thing? You see, narcissists, by the way, tend not to have much future thinking. In other words, where's this going? Where's this leading? Well, I want you to have some future thinking. So let's suppose that you respond. It's the old saying, don't respond to evil with evil, don't respond to insult with insult. Well, let's say you do respond with your own version of evil. Let's say you do respond to your own version of insulting. What's going to be next? Well, most narcissists are going to think, game on. And now, if you think that I've made your life miserable, I'm going to make it double miserable. Is that what you want? Another thing is you can say ugly things about their mother. That's an option. Another thing is you can. I knew one person who was doing someone's laundry and put peanut butter in their pockets of their blue jeans and got it back to them, and they felt like that was pretty funny. You can do that. Passive aggressive, subversive kind of stuff. Don't take that as a suggestion. Well, Dr. Carter told me I should do that. Yeah, you can respond, and it's normal for you to feel totally frustrated. You can do that, but where is it going? And then not only is that narcissist going to come back at you, but what have you done to yourself? Well, what you've done is you've made yourself just like the person that you're complaining about. Is that what you want? And so I'm one of these that says, yeah, I want to stand up to the narcissist. And I'm not doing this for nefarious reasons, but one of the things that narcissists like the least is they like being irrelevant the least. They don't want to know that they're irrelevant. And when they come along with their bullying stuff, and you let it be known through word, or more likely deed would be better, that your words are not relevant to me no longer. I used to plead with you as if your word or your opinion was the ultimate thing, but it's not. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that when you show that you have not reformed, that I deem you to be somebody that's not worthy of my attention, because it's not. I don't need that. And so that's the best way, in my opinion. Now, keep in mind that might be your opinion. You might want to be the kind of person that says, "Well, I'm going to give you a bloody nose." Well, okay, but get ready for your nose to get bloody too. And I'm hoping you can decide, and this is why I refer to us as Team Healthy. That says, someone in this equation needs to be the kind of person that says, "Well, I'm going to do what's wise, and I'm going to do what's appropriate." And if the narcissist doesn't care, then that's on them. But I'm going to be the kind of individual that says, "Well, I'm going to do what I believe is reasonable and best." Okay. Uh, Everything's an option, but not all options are smart options. Another one. I actually have a video that's I recorded. It's on the docket now. It's going to be 2-3 weeks out. This is about passive aggressive. This person says, "Would you speak more about the narcissistic passive aggressive contempt and give some examples of what that really looks like in our everyday interactions with narcissists?" Okay, I'll be glad to. Now, first of all, let's keep in mind that when we talk about anger, anger can be managed in a clean way. It can be managed in an aggressive way. And we often think of aggressive as being something that tears another person down with loud shouting and agitation and guilt induction and screaming and rage and all of that. And that's very aggressive. When we talk about passive aggressive, let's keep in mind it's still aggressive. It's abusive. It's a way of trying to bring another individual down and make them feel poorly about who they are, but it's just done with the least amount of vulnerability. So you asked for some illustrations. Here's some illustrations. One of the biggest ones is they won't cooperate with you. You may say something like, "Hey, I need some help over here." It's like, "Yeah, whatever," and they don't do it. It may be that they'll make a promise to you. Yeah, I'm gonna take care of us and such, and then they don't do it. It could be that when you're with that individual and they're just not pleased with you, they'll give you the old silent glare, and it's just like, "You are so irrelevant to me. I don't even want to look at you. I would. I don't even want to speak to you. You're not worth my attention." Please glare out somewhere else, or they may stare you down. It could be that these individuals in their passive aggressiveness are known for just having stubborn pessimism. For example, you may say something like, "Hey, something good happened to me today." And the passive aggressive narcissist will say something like, "Well, I'm sure you didn't have a whole lot to do with it." Dig. And that's the aggressive part. I want you to feel badly about yourself. It may be that they'll show indifference to you. If something is happening in your world and they want you to join them, then the narcissist is thinking, "I'm not going to join you. I don't care about you," and so they remain aloof. It could be that they complain constantly. And there's no particular positive goal to it other than to say, well, I don't like this, or this is terrible, or who came up with that. So there's all sorts of ways that they can let it be known. I want you to feel miserable when you're in my presence. And you might actually agree. Well, actually, you've made that clear. You do want that. And sure enough, I do feel miserable when I'm in your presence, which is why I don't want to be in your presence anymore. And what you do is you minimize your contact with them as much as possible. And when they go into that silly, pouting, controlling, I'm superior to you in such a way that I don't even have to acknowledge your existence. It's like, you know what? That's a foolish way to live. But if you feel like your coping skills are made well by something like that, that's on you. I'm not playing along with that, and so you let it be. Okay, so that would be some examples, and it makes you realize if somebody feels the need to build their way of life around that kind of behavior, that's not somebody that I need to hold to maintain close ties with, and that's where the resolve comes in. That's foolishness. I'm not going to go into that space. Okay. Okay. This is another one, kind of a similar nature. This person says, I'd like you to elaborate on how narcissists like to stay at arm's length and gather data about people. They don't exactly jump in. I'm the one I'm thinking about is a covert narcissist. They have to be in complete control at all times. So I guess they want to know how different people might be manipulated. I would love an example or two of that because I don't quite get the mechanics. Okay, so you have somebody that just seems to keep everybody at a passive at arm's length, and are they just gathering data? Um, I'll give you an illustration. There's one person that I know who came and told me it's like, yeah, I've been in this group of social group, and there's this one person who's really popular, and I've just been watching, and she has a way of making people seemingly feel good. But you know what? I found out she's been divorced twice, and she's no good. And so there's kind of a okay, so you're wanting to find out. Here's somebody who is kind and friendly and helpful, and had two situations where it didn't work out well, and so that becomes that, and that's probably the covert narcissist. There, they're thinking, "Yeah, I just found my reason that I can look at that individual as scorn." And any of you people that are pulled in by that, you're just in their little dysfunctional circle. And that's how they operate. So that would be an example. Just kind of watching. It's like, can I find some sort of dirt on someone that then allows me to say whatever positives are there are disingenuous, and therefore I wind up being superior. That's an example of how it works out. Or I know specifically another individual who is the ultimate powder. That individual will, when they're with a group or a family or work, they remember the Saturday Night Live Debbie Downer. This person can just find out something really negative about just about anything. And it's like, yeah, I know they all had a nice time with that, but it's probably because of this, and it's a terrible kind of a thing. And just has this sulking attitude. And people like that, they're going to sit there and just kind of watch. And when someone comes along and tells a joke or tells a funny story or offers some help, that person may think, yeah, they're up to something. And there's a cynicism that narcissists can operate with, and they're just dying to find out something's wrong with you. What is it? And so if it's accurate, if when you ask do narcissists keep people at arm's length so that they can gather data? Yes, they do. And in doing so, it's their way of trying to excuse themselves from having to be kind and friendly and all like that. And it's a very sinister way of having to live. And then you might ask yourself, and how happy is that person, by the way? And the answer is not. And so that's their own reward. And if you find somebody who thinks that way, it's like, then I'm not going to look to that person as being my inspiration. That's for sure, because they just look for reasons to rain on someone else's parade. Okay, next question here. I'm wondering, how do you know what reasonable boundaries you should have with a narcissistic parent who has turned against you when your boundaries might have a knockoff effect on their relationship with your children. So here you have a situation where it's a mother or father, and it's like, you know what? I've got a situation with my own parent, and it's not a good one. But if I establish a boundary, then my own kids, who apparently are naive and don't understand what's going on, they're going to wonder, well, why are we pulling back from grandpa or grandma? And is it even appropriate for you to do that? Well, it just really comes down to how severe their negativity is. For example, let's suppose that you have a grandfather who has made life miserable for multiple other family members by being so negative and difficult. But is the kind of grandparent who says, "Let's sit down at the table and play a game," and then the grandkids think it's all right. My thinking is eventually that those grandkids are going to be next. They're just not old enough yet to be able to call him out on his junk. And so, is it wrong if you have to set a boundary with someone? Is it wrong if it just kind of has a certain an impact on your own kids? Well, if the behavior of that person is so egregious that you have to pull back that strongly, then my guess is you're probably doing your kids a favor. Now, it's one of these, you have to go case by case to determine how far you go with your boundaries, because I don't know what all the particulars are here. But for example, let's suppose you had a grandfather, and the grandfather molested someone in the family, and it's like, I'm not gonna let my kids be around that. Well, you're doing your kids a huge favor by that. But let's suppose that the grandfather has a history of having been rather rambunctious with their agitation, but they're able to contain it around little kids. Then you make some adjustments. But I don't think it's wrong for you to say, well, I'm since I'm the parent, I'm going to be the gatekeeper. And when there's appropriateness, I can go along with it. But if it's not appropriate, I'm not at all bashful about putting my foot down and taking a break. So I think it's necessary. And if you have difficulty figuring out where that line should be, that's where maybe a therapist or somebody who's kind of adept or knows the situation more fully can help you and kind of walk it through. Sometimes two heads are better than one when you try to figure out where you're going to draw that line. Okay. All right, we're going to take this as our last one. This person says, "Why do I feel guilty for other people's sins?" Okay, that's just a very short question, but it tells us an awful lot. I'm going to make the assumption that you have someone else over here who's being really mean spirited, or they treat people badly, and you think, "Oh, I wish I could have prevented that." Okay, where did you learn how to think that way? And it's not just there out of a vacuum. It's there because you've been trained into it. And so I'm hoping you can begin asking, okay, if I feel guilty because person X over here is being rude, then maybe I need to think, well, maybe I was taught to be too responsible. I'm responsible for me, and I'm responsible for everybody else in my world too. And whereas I hope that you can be a good influence or and have a good and positive impact on other individuals, each individual is responsible for who they are on their own merits. And so it's a matter of you understanding, maybe if I go too far in that guilt thing, I was offered guilt by people who that's the only language they knew how to talk in: shame and guilt and condescension. And I need to learn how to have a different currency, affirmation and objectivity and those kind of things. And so my guess is that you're superimposing some historical messages that you haven't come to terms with onto your current circumstance. And you need to pull back and ask, if me being guilty for something that I didn't even do is an ongoing issue, what does this say about my history? And what does this say about the patterns that I'm in? And then what are my better alternatives? And again, that's where a good therapist or a good friend can come in and assist you with. Okay, guys. Sorry about that mix-up at the very beginning here. I guess I just clicked the live button too quickly. Oh, old Dr. C here is going to have to get on top of his electronic skills and all like that. But here we are. I'm glad you stayed with me on this. Listen, if you have some questions, put them in the comments section. I'm going to pick up on them, and I'll be answering them again the same time, same station next week. I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. We're in the middle of a hot summer here in Texas, so it's starting to get into the scorcher. It's late June, and it's kind of it's right on time. So we're muddle through the next couple of weeks sitting inside air conditioning mostly. So anyway, hope it's good where you are. Listen, I appreciate who you are. I appreciate you encouraging one another. And I will see you for another episode of Live Feed next week. Bye.